All right. Seeing people start joining. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this, the third and final event in the Mind the Gap Workforce Series. I'm Brian Smith, Economic Development Manager at Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona, as well as Vice Chair of AAED's Workforce Committee. I'll be your host today as we discuss partnerships between the workforce development ecosystem and employers. While our attendees continue to join, I'd like to remind you that this series highlights the gaps, current and anticipated, between workforce supply and demand in Arizona. Last month's session focused on workforce readiness, looking at best practices in assessing job seekers' aptitude, skill, and interest, as well as identification of any barriers to employment and executing plans that effectively develop job preparedness. Today, we'll be looking at case studies of successful employer partnerships that have connected job seekers with sustainable opportunities and career pathways with local employers. By accessing the perspective of the employer, we will identify how they became engaged with the workforce development system and developed or utilized innovative programs in their recruitment and talent development processes. Today, we have representing local employers, John Walters, Sales Director at Liberty Mutual Insurance, Stephen Cramer, Senior VP of Operations at Newbridge Business Solutions, Stefan Paskel, Chandler Site Leader for Allstate Insurance, and representing Workforce Partners, we have Rob Stenson, Business and Workforce Development Center Supervisor at Arizona at Work, City of Phoenix, Liza Noland, Director of Rural Programs for Local First Arizona's Rural Development Council, and Kevin Dumcum, Business Services Team Supervisor for Arizona at Work, Maricopa County. Thank you all for joining us, and I'd also like to take a second to thank our sponsors, Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona and Local First Arizona's Rural Development Council. With that, I will kick it over to Liza Noland for our sponsor highlight today to tell us a little bit about Local First Arizona's Rural Development Council. Liza?
Yeah, thank you. I hope you guys don't get sick of hearing my voice here today, but happy to sponsor this work. Proud board member for Arizona Association for Economic Development, and very proud of the work of the Workforce Committee that's put this together. So happy to be a part of it. Local First Arizona is known statewide very strongly for our work with small businesses, Arizona's based businesses. We're the largest locally owned coalition of businesses in the country with over 3,200 members that are owning, running, and operating businesses here in our state. But it's very hard to get behind the buy local message if you can't fix some of the systems that enable that connection. And so the work under our foundation encompasses the work of the Rural Development Council, our Food Development and Systems Development Team, and our micro entrepreneur programs with We Rise, a Black accelerator, and Fuerza, a Hispanic accelerator program. So the Arizona Rural Development Council is a nationwide recognized development organization focused on rural communities. There's about 17 of them currently in the country that are active. We sit probably about 2 or 3 in our programming, our annual budget, and the work that's being done in our rural communities through Local First Arizona. And workforce development is one of 5 pillars of programs that we focus on to help strengthen rural communities, one community at a time. So I could go on and on. Check out localfirstarizona.com for more information on all of our programs, and mark your calendars for August 4th, 5th, and 6th for the Rural Policy Forum taking place in person in Sahuarita this year. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Liza. With that, we will kick it over to our first workforce partnership with Stephen Cramer and Rob Stenson. Take it away.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Stenson. I am with Arizona at Work, City of Phoenix. I'm the supervisor of workforce development for business engagement initiatives under the Department of Labor grant program that we operate. And today I want to talk a little bit, give you a preview of what's been going on recently. This has been some very, very odd times. COVID is weird. We have seen employers coming to us at a very, very rapid pace. So if you're speaking with employers or you're an employer yourself, you're probably feeling a little stressed when it comes to fulfilling your recruiting needs, hiring individuals. And I'm going to show you a couple of the reasons why the majority of the industries, as a matter of fact, in the state of Arizona are experiencing a lot of stress. And so the good news is the employers are posting more jobs than ever. And so you may think that the pandemic caused some chaos. It did cause chaos. It was about 2, 3 months when hiring kind of dropped down pretty significantly, but then it began doing something strange. It ramped up very, very quickly. In the past 12 months, we've had over 1.14 million unique job postings in the state of Arizona alone. There's a total that's a total of 5.38, if I can talk. I'll go grab a cup of coffee after this. 5.38 million total postings. So it's usually about a 5 to 6 to 1 ratio of unique postings to the number of positions that are open. Alone, just in March alone, we've had 308,000 unique postings. And so the graph that you see there is showing that since I only went back to 2016, we've had more postings in the past 4 or 5 months than we have since all the way back to 2016. So pretty interesting information of what's going on and why there's some stress factors. There's just a lot of open positions. The number of positions is pretty diverse, and the education requirements, what's being asked for, both in experience and education wise, it gets a little frustrating. The data goes out and pulls all the job postings that were done in the state. 54 to 59%. The employers don't list what their minimum requirements are, but we know that based off of these numbers, a lot of the positions are in those entry level areas, or a good portion of them are in entry level positions. But what about the different types of occupations? In a minute, Stephen and I are going to talk about some of the customer service represented positions. That's number 3 in the position. But you've got a diverse grouping of positions that are currently open. And in industries that are fairly diverse. And I tongue in cheek a little bit, accommodation, what are you kidding me? That made the list. It's in the top 10. John Walters is going to talk a little bit about that finance and insurance component that's almost always in the state of Arizona. Almost said Wisconsin. I dropped back about 15 years back to my days in Wisconsin, in the top 5 of different industries that we see. And just for fun, here's what the accommodation and food service looks like. It's ramping up a little bit faster than I think we would have anticipated. I think that would have been a little flatter, but it seems to be escalating pretty quickly. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And Stephen, how you doing this morning? How are you?
Doing well. So I'll kind of give some context to my feedback to Rob. Rob and I worked together for, I guess, going on 8 years now with the City of Phoenix Advanced Business Services Committee that I co-chair with him. And then I'm also the president of the North American Customer Service Management Association, as well as my day job at New Bridge Business Solutions. So Rob and I have been dealing with this challenge for many, many years. One of the things that I always talk about, and Rob and I banter about quite a bit, is career pathing. And one of the things, if you look at the slides that Rob put up, I'd suggest, if you look at the one that talks about the level of education requirement as it relates to experience. And what you'll see is that obviously in this slide that I'm looking at, there's 667,000 postings for no experience required, and no education is 54%. And so one of the things, Rob, we talk about, and I'd like maybe get some feedback, more updated. How do you see the high school system, if you will, and then also higher ed, and that would include community college as well as your ASU, et cetera, academic level, preparing people to understand how to career path to get to those higher experience, higher paying jobs, so they don't get stuck in the same position for a long period of time. And I'm going to kind of focus my questioning back and forth about career pathing, just heads up.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important distinction when employers are talking about minimum experience. Research has actually indicated when an organization states minimum experience, they're actually talking 2 to 3 years of experience of some sort. And that's just what the data comes out and validates. And it helps those of you that are in the workforce development side, you scratch your head going, man, it feels like these employers want all of this lived experience first. Well, that's really can be done in a variety of ways. So when we're looking at high school individuals and college, we worked with the University Alliance and talked about first-time college students and how do they articulate to employers their work experience. And a lot of the research has found during some qualitative components that individuals didn't know how to express or translate their education experience into work experience. And so helping individuals and job seekers understand how to articulate that to employers in a more real manner of how you've actually had that hands-on. Listen, don't the employers are trying to make the best hire possible in their process. They want the best possible candidate, and risk is a scary component. And so if you as a job seeker, you've got to have that proof that you can be able to provide. So education programs like yours, Stephen, that provide that hands-on experience and help individuals articulate in through customer service specifically, those are really important.
Yeah, and one of the things, you brought some good points, Rob. Career pathing, it's not just about, someone comes in one organization within a company and goes straight up that ladder. Career pathing includes laterals. You go into like a customer service department as a entry-level position, for example, and then you migrate to a higher level position within that same organization. But then you may jump to another department that has, some similarity of maybe 50% of what you did before, and now you learn another 50%, and you migrate throughout those organizations one at a time. And in my career, for example, I was in operations at UPS, then I migrated to customer service, then I managed into IT, operational, and receivables management. So I had four completely different departments that I went through from a lateral perspective of development, which, I also got raises as I went through those departments, which then better prepared me to go up to the next level. And that's what I see in a lot of the more successful individuals in corporate America and even in entrepreneurship, is that these people have been coached and developed. And that's where I go back to that question, how do you become successful as an entrepreneur at some point? Well, if you just learn one position, if you're a great cook, that's awesome. But that's only one sliver, excuse the pun, on how to run a restaurant, right? There's property management, there's supply, there's people management, there's systems, IT with the POS systems. There's way more than just being a great chef. And so I give that example to people, especially younger individuals who are starting off in careers. You have to look at your job process as a career pathing process, and so that you have the ability to develop yourself, utilizing corporate America in this conversation to train you on all these different aspects that you'll never get that kind of development from academia, because the academia will teach you how to be a good accountant in process, but on how to actually apply those skills, you have to be in an accounting firm and understand how to apply it within the applications that they use in the company or the auditing firm that you have to be in. Do you see a lot of that conversation out there, Rob, as far as career pathing and lateral scenarios when you talk to some of these employers, so that it motivates and retains individuals in their organization?
I think at ZipRecruiter, we've sat in meetings with companies like ZipRecruiter who talk about, hey, it's not just about pay. They've increased their pay. They use the example of how they increased their wages, and it didn't impact retention. What impacted retention was the ability to provide training and that mind engagement for individuals, and that opportunity to increase within the organization. I'll use myself as a perfect example. I'm a very impatient man. My team will tell you that there's times where I want to go. I see the end game and I want to be there. I want to win. And so individuals who are always looking at that next step, we oftentimes make a big mistake. and we jump ship to go to what we think is a better deal just for a lateral move. Maybe we just went for a pay increase. I can't tell you how many times I probably jumped ship for another organization at my own jeopardy or my own peril, because I was in a good coaching scenario. And if I would have stayed where I was, I could have gone and moved my career up much, much faster. But because of my anxiety or wanting to get here and get going, you know, I've probably shot myself in the foot a few too many times. And that's important to realize. 25 cents across the street is not necessarily a good thing. That may be a short-term gain, but what if you were just, you gave up $1 because you were on a career path and your organization was bringing you along for that next step? And I think that's where there's got to be that communication between employers and their job seekers. And it doesn't happen enough of, what do you have in mind for me as as my employer? Where are we going? What is this path? And having that real conversation. That's what reviews are supposed to be about, in those incidentals. And I think we forget that as leaders, to have those conversations.
And Rob, you bring up an excellent point that I was going to kind of get into, which is there should be, some perception by employers how to partner amongst each other. And that's one of the things that we've done in the ABS group for many years, is we bring them together in this in our monthly meetings or semi-monthly meetings. And we talk to them about, okay, where is your organization in the cycle of someone's career path, if you will, right? Is your company an entry-level company? And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody is a different, there's Chevrolets and there's Ferraris. It doesn't mean one's better. They're all cars with steering wheels, right? And 4 wheels. And where are you in that process? And if you're an entry-level company where someone comes in, that's great. But what you then need to think about is, okay, you're going to have attrition rate within your organization. Why not build a partnership with the next level of organization that's out there, so that your people that are coming into your organization go, look, I can start here, be here for a couple of years, and then this other company is going to pick me up because they know that I have development before I even get there, from a respected organization that they officially partner with. Maybe 2 completely different industries, not even akin to each other, but they know that these skills are being built someplace else, as well as that next level companies, has candidates that are coming in that don't qualify, and they go, look, you don't qualify here, but if you go to one of our partner organizations that we work with, companies, and you go there for a year and a half, you come back, you're at the top of the resume list, because we know that you've taken the time and the opportunity to develop yourself and to be developed by a credible organization that we feel comfortable working with. And that's one of the things, Rob, we've had some good success with that in the ABS group over the years. It's kind of difficult, because that goes to my other question of HR people and their roles in that conversation, and understand it's not just about me and mine. It's about, how do you, as a corporate environment, as a entrepreneur environment, find the best candidates out there. And just posting jobs on, the most latest and greatest job board is awesome, but you're all fighting each other. Why not put a plan in to work with other organizations that can be feeders back and forth between each other for mutual success? Give me some examples that you've seen in the ABS group, possibly in the city of Phoenix, Rob.
There's right now, it's just that hard fact of trying to attract individuals. Everybody's kind of in that same boat. And so doing the status quo is probably our biggest nemesis when it comes to recruiting folks. And so that breaking those habits of we've always done it this way, we've always done this type of recruiting, that's some of the problems. What we have seen is, anytime we can move and advance into more of a person-to-person process of the networking component, that seems to do much better in the way of hires. Employers are able to see the individual for who they're actually going to be in the work environment. Not stating that you have to take the ATS system or the applicant tracking system 100% out of the picture, but I think what's occurring more and more, and I think employers are becoming more aware, is sometimes your applicant tracking system is actually your not your friend. It's putting folks into your garbage pile or your trash pile that it really should not be putting in there. That's a two-way street. It's two faults. Having a poorly written job description for the keyword matching component, and using language that most of their folks that they're trying to hire don't use, and then also for the job seekers, training them on how to do their resume, their cover letter, and finding positions. And so what we're seeing is those bots are still not quite where they need to be. Artificial intelligence is coming a long way, but if your organization is just relying 100% on your applicant tracking system, that would be a problem. The companies that we've seen success are those that are going the extra mile, engaging with the education programs, bringing individuals on as interns, bringing them on for work experience components, and getting involved in the process.
Yeah, and I would agree, Rob. I mean, what I see with the ABS group and the North American Customer Service Management Association I work with very closely, it's HR organizations that focus on the networking and continual networking in the community. And when I say community, I'm talking about the corporate community amongst other employers of different levels that complement them within the community of associations, so that people in these associations understand the value of the company. And it's not just a job board conversation. And that's where they find the most success and the most highest quality individuals. I know at my company, Newbridge Business Solutions, I actually had a conversation last night with someone who was like, how do you find your IT folks? And I go, if I don't know them personally, I don't bring them on. And I have to know them personally through networking for at least 6 months, because I want to see how they interact. I want to understand how their communication skills apply to the job that they would be doing, because they're dealing with our customers. And as a result, when I see how they interact and I see how they communicate to these different individuals within a networking environment, I know they're a good fit or not a good fit for my organization.
Excellent. Stephen, thanks for the exchange of conversation. And I think our time is right about up there, Brian.
It sure is. Thank you for all that information and bringing us from a systems level perspective down to the individual job seekers pathway into the system. And I have a feeling, spoiler alert, that we'll be talking a little bit more about employer collaboratives as well. Next up, we have Kevin Dumcum, who will be telling us about the Maricopa County, Arizona at Work business services.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you, Rob and Stephen, for a great conversation, and good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to be here. Rob started by sharing a little bit of data about what's been happening over the last year, particularly with COVID. I want to expound on that just a little bit about how that has impacted the services that we deliver and how we deliver those services through the workforce development system. So Arizona at Work, we are the public workforce development program. We cover the entire state of Arizona. We have 12 local areas, including City of Phoenix, Maricopa County, Pinal County, Pima County, Northern Arizona, and then other areas across the state. One of the services that we provide, and in my opinion, one of the more important services that we provide, is our rapid response layoff services. So when a company gets into a situation where they need to downsize or close, we can deploy services for those affected individuals to give them tools to be successful with their job search. And our gold standard is when we can make direct introductions for those impacted individuals to new employment opportunities. So take a step back to March of 2020 and early April of 2020. So first we had the 2-week stay at home, and then we had the governor's proclamation that took effect on April 1st. And as a result, the unemployment rate in Arizona skyrocketed from around 4.5% to over 16% in about 3 weeks. We've never seen anything like that. Many of those who were directly impacted were in the hospitality industries, the restaurant industries, the retail industries. In other words, many of the people who were directly impacted had great customer service experience and presumably were very good at their jobs. What was interesting is that in late March and early April, we were getting almost as many calls from customer service companies, customer support companies, finance and insurance, asking if they can get in front of these individuals because they have the skills that these companies were looking for. What we found out, or unfortunately, is that many of the layoffs that were happening in March and early April were classified as furloughs. And at that time, everyone was kind of expecting and maybe hoping that we would weather the storm, it would be over in 2 to 4 weeks, and then we would go back to some sort of normal, whatever normal would look like. And it wasn't until we got to about mid-April, early May that we realized, that everyone realized that wasn't going to be the case, that we were in this for the long haul. By the time we realized, or by the time everyone realized, including the employers, that we were in a very different paradigm, the paradigm kept changing. So Rob talked a little bit about the fact that job seekers are not looking for employment in the numbers that would suggest, given the unemployment rates. And that is true. There are not as many job seekers as we would expect, given what the unemployment rate is. And there's a number of reasons for that, and I'm not going to take the time to go through that here. I will give you a little teaser that that is a topic that the Workforce Development Committee of the AAD is taking a look at, and hopefully to come up with some diagnosis and some solutions for why that may be. What I want to talk about for the rest of my time is what did we do in response? What did the workforce development system do as a result of the pandemic and the economic fallout of the pandemic? So this is not sequential, but one of the first things that we did as a workforce development program is we contacted every business in our database to simply ask them, are you laying off? Are you pausing? Are you hiring? And we found that there were a lot of businesses that were still hiring. More businesses were hiring than were laying off or pausing. There were a lot of businesses that were laying off and pausing, but more of them were hiring. Now, it is true that at that time, it was not as many businesses hiring in April as there was in February. But as Rob pointed out, that has changed. And there are more businesses hiring now than at any time over the last 5 years, at least, if we take a look at the data. So businesses are hiring, there's a lot of opportunities. For those businesses that are laying off or have been laying off, and thankfully it has slowed dramatically to about one a month, one every other month now that we're seeing, we are still deploying our rapid response services. One of the challenges that we had in March and April, however, is that the layoffs happened so quickly that by the time we heard about them, they had already passed. So we did not have an opportunity to get in front of the impacted workers. By the time we found out, they had already scattered. But now, hopefully, the ideal situation is that a layoff occurs at some point in the near future, but gives us enough time to get in front of them, to talk about our services, and to introduce them to new employment so that ideally, the day after their last day at their current position, they have a new position lined up. That's what everyone is hoping for. We also, the public workforce system, Arizona at Work, we did connect with all of our workforce development partners and nonprofits across the region, not to make sure that we all have the same services, but to understand what services each of us have so that regardless of where an employer gets into the workforce development system, they will have access to all of the services of all of the workforce partners. We wanted to make sure that we're taking care of our businesses, because if we take care of our businesses, then they will hire. And if they hire, they will grow. And if they grow, they create more jobs. And if they create more jobs, that's more opportunities for our clients. So everybody wins. We want our employers to be as successful as possible. So we coordinated with all of our workforce development partners to make sure that we could do that. Like every business, we converted all of our in-person businesses to virtual, including job fairs and hiring events, which is not an easy thing because by nature, job fairs are very interactive. How do you create an interactive environment on a Zoom call? There are ways to do it, but it's very, very challenging. We took the time to figure out how to do that and how to do that effectively so that we can get groups of employers in front of groups of job seekers so that employers can talk about their opportunities and job seekers can find those great new employment opportunities. And finally, we continue with our basic services of understanding what an employer's skill needs are, how employers can best communicate those skill needs, and directly referring qualified candidates to employers. We continue to do that. We will continue to do that. So the work that we do is still very much the same as it was a year ago, a year and a half ago. The way that we do it is a little bit different. We are trying to be as responsive as possible to the new reality. We do expect that as we head into the second half of the year, the paradigm may change again, and we'll have to be very reactive, but we have the tools in place to be able to do so. So thank you for your time this afternoon. Brian, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Thank you, Kevin. That was a great overview of the resources available to our cities and all the cities on the call. Make sure you make sure you interact with our local Arizona at Work partners. Also want to remind attendees that you can ask any questions you have of our panelists in the chat or Q&A box. With that, I'll kick it over to John Walters. John?
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much. I'm John Walters. My main job is at Liberty Mutual, but I have a couple side hustles, as I like to call it. One of them, I sit on the Workforce Arizona Council. That council is amazing when it comes to workforce development, very, very passionate. Another thing that I spend a lot of time on is workforce development with Arizona Insurance. And it's a nonprofit trade association that really brings these things we're talking about together. I want to spend a few minutes, though, just talking briefly about the challenge, talk a little about the jobs here in the financial services world, talk about the pipeline, and then give everybody a nice perspective on how do we fill it and bring it all together. The first challenge is, depending on which data you want to look at, there's about 60,000 company jobs in Arizona in the financial services sector. That's a ton, and that's awesome. They're all nice jobs, great benefits, good pay. So you think they'd be beating down my door for a job. Unfortunately, my head's going like this because somehow insurance, we're great at branding ourselves. You've got a cute lizard, you got an emu out there, you've got Jake, you've got Mayhem. We're amazing at attracting you as clients, but we haven't taken that same idea and pulled you in as an employee to realize what we have. And so that's a huge challenge. The second piece of the challenge is 45% of our workforce today is age 50 and over. Super exciting, depending on which side of the conversation you're on, but it's a huge challenge. Think about it. In the next 10 to 15 years, half our workforce is gone and we're already short. So that really presents an enormous challenge for the insurance and financial services side of the house. When you think about the jobs, the jobs here in Arizona alone, from customer service to sales to claims to back office, everything under the sun, there's literally not a background that we can't use unless it's criminal, but that's a whole nother story. So I'll just put my asterisks out there because, got to do that. But as you're thinking about it, there's not a background. One of the challenges, I love going to colleges, community colleges, and throw out there and go, all right, what major? What's your favorite major? Which one do you think we need in our industry? And I've never been stumped yet. So I share that with you, meaning we are crazy inclusive. That's exciting. So you hear the challenge, what we have, you hear the jobs, and you think of this, it seems like a no-brainer, but it's actually right back to where Stephen and Rob were a few minutes ago. That whole career mapping, the whole pipeline piece is broke in our industry. And that's where we've been able to partner with a lot of different organizations and partner with a lot of places to bring it together. One of the big things that we've done as an industry is focused on the apprenticeship program. So if you think about a college student, they're going to do an internship. That's been a great pipeline. If you think about somebody who's already in the industry, who already has the skills, all these great things, that's a regular employee. They just come right in and they're up and running. What about everybody else? How do we upskill them? And the things we were talking about with the pipeline a little bit ago, working with groups, there's not a pipeline, and I don't want to necessarily send you down the road for a year or two to get your skills, and then I'm going to hope you come back. Hope isn't a really good plan in my world because it doesn't work out so well. I need something more firm and sure. That's where the apprenticeship programs have come into play for us. I can tell you the partnerships and filling the pipeline for our apprenticeship programs has been amazing. We've worked with the community colleges. It's been terrific. Maricopa Community College, the 10 schools in the district, amazing source. We've used that. Arizona Work has been a huge pipeline that we've been able to pull together. Again, we work as a large group through Arizona Insurance, and that's what helps the association bring the talent into our world. Because if I talk about how great Liberty is, you're kind of turned off. But if I talk about how great our industry is, and then I spend some time with you and say, you're probably awesome for Allstate, or you're perfect for Liberty, or I bet you'd kill it at State Farm, and take an inclusive approach is what Arizona Insurance does. It brings that together. The community groups, we've partnered with CPLC and done some things, and it's just been terrific. Like again, filling that whole pipeline of the apprenticeship to the other roles allows us to do that. One of the things I'd encourage you to spend some time on is thinking about how do we build a pipeline. Arizona Insurance, again, the nonprofit trade association, we realize we've got to get back into the high schools now. So we started with the four-year schools, then we moved into the community college and that level of education, and now we're working back into the high schools going, we need a 10-year pipeline for our industry because all of us that are here in Arizona want to have an amazing financial services sector. Obviously, we're personally invested in it, but at the same time, that pipeline, it needs to be built much more and much sooner than some 25-year-old who realized, wow, my dreams aren't coming together. Time to change jobs and head over here. We want to bring that reality much sooner and allow people to progress through the career. Things like Stephen was talking about, where we'll educate you, we'll develop you, we'll move you forward. We use a term latticing in our industry, right? So I may go left or right, same pay, different roles, different opportunities. Exactly what Stephen was talking about with his UPS experience. Those are the things that we're doing within our industry and within our companies to pull those together. I got to tell you though, in the end, it takes a village. Our favorite quote in the world. In this case, it takes a village of great nonprofits, of great resources to find and fill our pipelines. And that's where I got to say thank you to Arizona Work. Thank you to CPLC, to Goodwill. There's a ton of groups that we've partnered with that have allowed that to become reality. And so other employers, I highly encourage you to use those things. And on the nonprofit side, if there's something we can do to integrate you in to some of the things that the financial services industry is doing, please write down my name, get a hold of me. Happy to plug you in so we can get more people employed. With that, I want to pass it right back to Brian.
Love it. Thank you. And thank you for sharing the collaboration with, other insurance groups across the state. We love to see collaboration even amongst, rivals in the sector. So for another perspective on hiring for an insurance company, we have Stefan Paskel. Stefan?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully just like everyone that's been attending, I've been taking notes left and right, getting some gold from all the panelists. A lot like John, it must be something with financial industry insurance, some side gigs going on. I serve on the board for the North American Customer Service Management Association, another board for the Help Desk Institute, and do some entrepreneurial work as well. Primary day job with Allstate as a senior leader there. And, I was looking as I was taking notes, there's so much that comes with all of this. I was going through an article and I was trying to figure out, right, all of us this past year, some of the differences that have happened, the new normal for a whole bunch of us, and how we're adjusting now and how this whole discussion plays into that. There was an article in the Times on the 16th, and it was talking about basically the theme being, how can there be like so much, when you think about unemployment, so many people looking for jobs, and yet so difficult to fill those jobs. And again, it doesn't make sense. We look at some of the numbers and we see it. How can that be? And it was reminding us that this is a very unique time in history. Is it because of unemployment benefits? Is that keeping people out? Is it because so many still need to be at home taking care of kids, or not just kid or older ones? Is it because now I have a little bit more I have a little bit more saved after the initial panic, so now you got to show me the money because I have more choices? Because I'm just want to stay at home and invest in cryptocurrency because that's going to be the way that I'm going to make it rich, right? All these different things that come into it. But what's the bottom line when we're thinking about it? I heard one of the best, it was another networking meeting, and it was one of the best insights that I've heard for a while. And it was that we don't individually, normally when you're trying to solve something, right, whether we're trying to figure out how to place employees or how to put prospective job seekers with the jobs that they want, and that's going to make them have that career that we all want for ourselves and that we want for them as well. We start thinking about it, and we go through we go through the process. Exactly why are we in this particular spot? Or more importantly, how do we get out of it? And normally there's some wisdom to go to, right? There's always somebody that you can find that they've been there, they've done that, been there before. But that's not really the case now, right? So none of us individually, there's no one person you can go to with wisdoms that, yep, I've been through the Spanish influenza, right? I've been back in 1914, the last time there was a pandemic, and had to deal with being in an in-office situation, now suddenly working from home. There's not that wisdom to tap into. So how do you get through it? How do you quickly adapt and get to a point where our businesses are thriving, and more importantly, all these individuals that are looking for these thriving careers get them? And that's through the collective partnerships that we've been talking about. That's through having those conversations. We, like all of our organizations, some part, right? We always say that there's probably some type of development, but now when you're talking about career pathing, what that may look like in Allstate may be a little bit different than what's happening at Liberty Mutual, or what's happening in a completely different field. But now these type of conversations, partnering with someone like Stephen in Newbridge and in Arizona, now we're getting the finer details. What really works for you, what doesn't. Those conversations about partnering with other organizations that may not even be in your field, or in some cases that are. I mean, that's another concept that's come up in some of our meetings, that concept of self-selection. And really the power is, right, with so many people looking for work, you talk about supply and demand, in a case where people have different options, that power of being able to select and to go through a process where maybe in this case, I love this person, I love this candidate, but I see where they live, I see where their goals are. But now I've been working with John, and I'm not in competition with John. We're all trying to build up the industry. We're all trying to build up Arizona in the field. That might be a perfect referral for him. I thought that was gold, being able to have those type of conversations and being open, where realizing that working with a competitor is really working for yourself as well. It's really pushing up the needle for everyone. That concept behind from a talent acquisition perspective, I thought that was gold as well. Again, not only is this new for all of us, but think about for most organizations, those that have been leading it for a while, those that have that senior experience, we were all used to a particular norm, whether that be working in the office, whether that be your traditional talent acquisition team being able to do the same methods that they've done before. But this is a new reality. It's a new world now. So everything has to be looked at. Does that mean that our existing talent acquisition teams don't have a role? Well, no. But how do we, just like everything else we're trying to, how do we enhance that? I thought we got some great feedback that just relying on just what the particular tool does is not going to help us. How are we enhancing that? How are we having some of these partnerships within the community that are really going to be those pipelines? So a lot of us, I thought that was another key one when we're looking to how we're going to go forward. Not just colleges anymore, which is a lifeline for us as well, but that point of, are we looking not just the next couple of years out, but how are we looking as business leaders, as community leaders, as those that are involved with nonprofits that are looking at our kids and trying to see what type of environment we're making for them? How are we looking further out into the future? 10 years, right? Maybe it's high schools now. It might even be going a little further on as time goes on. But it's those type of collaborative conversations, and we simply cannot have those on our own. We have to be able to build partnerships like this, be able to have discussions like this, have networks like this, so that all of our organizations and all of us individually can continue to be succeeding. Because when we can do that, it's really one of those things where everybody wins. And I know that's something that all of us want. So just a couple of thoughts there, Brian. Back to you.
Thank you, Stefan. And I think that's really a powerful point you made about developing these collaboratives across industries, because we're in the field of talent development and acquisition. The currency is skills, and not necessarily just experience within an industry, but experience performing tasks and carrying out activities. So to bring us home, we have Liza, who will give us a little bit of a different perspective, rural and healthcare. So take it away, Liza.
Perfect. Let me pull up the right screen here. Are you seeing orange slides?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, I don't think I could have cued Stefan and John any better. You guys really hit some really key notes for the talent pipeline management work that Local First Arizona is doing. In speaking about collaboration and in working with your competition, I am with you there. So tell you a little bit about our work in this realm. We in rural development started to notice a very, very specific issue and challenge with rural job creation. And this was pre-COVID, so you can only imagine now, but there's a lot of amazing things going on at the state level, economically speaking. And we are growing rapidly, #2 in the US for job growth, if not higher now. Fastest growing state in the United States. At the time we were #4. I'm sure that's higher now. #3 in GDP growth in the US. And we had about 166,000 jobs that were moving in to the state. And it sounds amazing, except that about 85% of those jobs are going into Maricopa County. And love Maricopa County, got some great representation here from that, but that's a problem for our rural communities in that there's not that even close to a similar level of job creation happening. So if you look at the chart, Maricopa County shows quite a few new jobs and job opportunities being created, and the rest of our counties just fall off the radar in where some of this job creation is happening. 190 jobs per day being created in Maricopa County. The next closest at the time was 78 jobs per month in Yuma. And, you know, that's not even close, never mind the fact that the rest of the state really doesn't register. And so we needed to find a solution that was rural based, that had some on the ground rural connection and connectivity to the talent pool and to the jobs that exist there. So talent pipeline management is a 6-step model that was developed by the US Chamber Foundation. And we love it because it's action-based. I think there's a lot of conversations that happen around a lot of challenges in Arizona in general, but around workforce, this is an action-based program. So as you participate in this, you're moving through steps with accountability and reporting, and you know that you're making progress. And those steps are specifically walking employer collaboratives through an experience to identify their critical pain points and solutions that might exist that they haven't considered. So these are sort of the steps, and I'll talk to you about them in real time here, how it applies. But what makes TPM different than most workforce models is first and foremost, it's employer-led, demand-driven. So often there are conversations happening by educators and by workforce professionals and all of us economic development professionals. And we're trying to solve these problems without the specific input of the employers. And although we might have input from one or two, specifically in regions or rural communities, we don't have input from many. And if we can get them into collaboratives, either by industry or by occupation, then we can really kind of get to the heart of what they're seeing in their industry and what skills really are needed that they're looking for that they're not seeing. And so this whole process is employer-led. It engages the employers alone on their own through facilitated conversation and activity through 5 of those 6 steps without anybody else at the table. And then at the end, you bring in the partners and solutions that exist. So the employers really have an opportunity to be heard, to think, to overcome some of their competitive tendencies, and really kind of identify what they're looking for and what some of the root causes are that they're seeing. Those root causes often are found not only in the workforce or the economics of a community or an industry, but sometimes in the community itself. So John, you said it takes a village. And what we found through this model is it actually takes the village, that there's a community cause oftentimes that is leading or sort of aiding some of the challenges in workforce development. And sometimes there's a community solution outside of the workforce system. Also, it diversifies partnerships. So TPM is a model that enables Goodwill to come to the table with Arizona at Work, to come with community college programming, but also maybe some different programs, nonprofit organizations that offer some of that support. And really, when those partners come to the table, they have a very clearly defined problem demand, need, and challenge they're trying to overcome, and through that can collaborate on the solution together. So it's a pretty cool process in real time. This is an example of one of our most proud, I think, collaborators at this point. And I noticed Jennifer Hayes is with us from Mojave La Paz, Arizona at Work. This is how this happens. So we were approached, I think it was by economic development in the region, specifically City of Kingman. There is a specific issue with CNAs in their community. It's a retirement community, a lot of long-term care. Long-term care is a big economic driver for them, and yet they are challenged with hiring CNAs. Arizona at Work collaborated with us to pull together a really great group of the employers in that industry. And we talked to them through the first step with this communicating demand of what critical pain points they were seeing. The first one was that there are no applicants. So we're hearing that across every industry we're working in, every collaborative is, it's not the quality of candidates, it's that there aren't any. And so that's a challenge. But also there's a specific bottleneck in the certification process for CNAs, and COVID caused this bottleneck. So when we asked them to what kind of tune were they seeing this, between just 4 employers that took the survey, because good luck getting surveys filled out, but we got them. And just with across 4 employers, there were 65 open CNA positions in this area. That's a lot. That's a lot of job creation in one industry. So that was fascinating. And what they were finding was that the certification requirements, they require a clinical, an on-site clinical, and the community college had shut down clinical training because of COVID. So they had people coming through the pipeline that were getting stuck at the clinical step, and they weren't able to fill some of those roles. So the Lingenfelter Center, specifically Creative Care in Mojave County, operates 4 different locations. And they were overcoming this themselves by doing on-site clinicals, and they were just taking on the cost of that. So they were doing that with their own sort of workforce and their own talent pipeline, and training people out of the curriculum into their own clinicals and then moving them into the open roles. But there was obviously cost associated. So that wasn't a solution that everybody could deploy. However, they happen to have a curriculum for that training that was certified by the Board of Nursing. And Arizona at Work has this tool called the Eligible Training Provider List. It is a fantastic tool. And so we worked with Jennifer and her team over at Arizona at Work, and are working on getting Creative Care certified as an eligible training provider, in which they could be reimbursed for every person who goes through their training on site. So now it's a revenue generator for their organization, and they can provide a workforce to the rest of their competition in this community. This is fascinating, right? This is competition coming together to figure out a solution that's impacting them all and their level of service, their economics of their community, and partnering with the tools that exist through Arizona at Work and others. So we're about a day early here, but hopefully this is voted on through the system here this week. And we really could have come up with a solution that could be deployed across assisted living across the state. So our next steps in this is looking at talent back mapping. Where do our good CNAs come from? How are we recruiting and in what places? And how do we retain, as we've all mentioned here? Hopefully in developing new partnerships to add to this collaborative. So we're working across manufacturing, retail soft skills, teacher retention, mental health, emergency dispatch, beginning farmers, young professionals. There's no bounds to this model. And it is truly a collaborative effort that brings employers to the table to get that really hard to get input from them, and all the partners together to use all of their tools to come up with solutions. So that's what we're up to.
Thank you, Liza. We love the TPM system, and we'd love to see more collaboratives spring up across the state, facilitated, of course, by Local First or other providers that are using the TPM framework. So now we have a couple minutes before the top of the hour for a little bit of Q&A. We have one question in the chat that we had a written answer to, but would like to, open it up to rest of the employers. I'll just read it word for word. Given that the talent pipeline has not been solid for many years now, have employers in this panel considered raising entry-level wages to attract and retain more applicants, and raising that by more than a few cents per hour or more than a few $100s per month? The wage compression and maintaining pace with cost of living question is eternal. Open up for that for any of the employers on the panel.
I'm happy to mention just at least on the financial services side of it. It's a great question. It's a great conversation piece. What we do find though is the attraction piece isn't so much the wages, because we do pay significantly above minimum. We have full benefits, 401ks, the education piece, reimbursements, the full packages are there. It's really a perception problem, and it's a branding problem is really where our struggles are, and that's where our pipelines are. People don't realize the vast opportunities, the stereotypical, it's all a call center, and they think that's all we do is sell. And that's a misnomer. About 10% of our entire population is in sales. And so we find the more we educate, then we get a lot of activity and a lot of excitement. And so it's not a wage drive because our wages are already there.
Yeah, I would support that conversation point that John made. In our training program, we have a 1-week customer service training program. All the employers that we're working with are paying anywhere from $30,000 to $45,000 for an entry-level job. And so this is full benefits, tuition reimbursement, et cetera. And I think Rob can probably support from his statistics that most of the individuals that are looking for positions, obviously pay rate is important and benefits is important, as well as tuition reimbursement. But what they're really looking for is what we were talking about earlier, is opportunity to be developed and grow their career with a company. And to that point, I think that there's a misperception on the pay rate, and that a lot of in my industry, the contact center industry, that it's all sales. And to John's point, it's probably 10%. Because most of that industry doesn't exist anymore, the cold calling industry, if you want to put it in those terms. But Rob, what would you say from an analytics perspective?
Yeah, I mentioned in the comments, that's actually what we have seen, is particularly in the past, let's see, I got 6 months pulled up, just looking at the average advertised wages from all of the job postings. You had a significant increase from October all the way through about February. It was actually over $2 an hour of an increase, but the average over the 6-month time frame is about $1 extra per hour. So I think what you are seeing is exactly what the writer is talking about. It is a supply demand type scenario, just as anything else in economics. And so as individuals or companies are looking for specific people or attracting folks a little bit more, getting an edge above their competition, you do see the wages kind of go up and down, and you will over a normal timeline during an economic time frame.
Thank you. Love the digital format, because we always get real-time analytics to respond to questions like that. As we're at just about the top of the hour, want to open it up to each of you, maybe a rapid fire one-off per panelist. What would you say is the single most important component to a successful partnership with a workforce service provider? And I'm seeing one question in the chat. We'll get to that if we have a little time after this one. So single most important component to a successful partnership. Start with Liza.
I would encourage being exploratory. I think that's the word, to really think outside the box, be proactive, and be open to exploring different solutions to long-standing problems.
Thank you.
Stefan? I would supplement that with collaboration for sure.
Yeah. Well, and just adding, right? So I think a lot of us talked about it as well. You build those trusting relationships over time with these partnerships. So being authentic, being involved, you have those. We all have those right motives behind it. You build those trusting things. You know that your partners are going to do good by you.
I would just wrap it up by saying honest communication, because if we can help scale that and dial that in perfectly for all parties involved, it ends up being the old cliche win-win, and the third win being the person we were able to find an amazing job for.
Rob, Kevin?
When we're looking at it, as it's completely, from my perspective, it's getting fully engaged, and so not just getting excited at the planning stage, but maintaining that excitement and that involvement all the way through the completion of a collaborative approach, and that's sometimes difficult. We have the tyranny of the urgent, so we get pulled off into different directions.
From my perspective, I love the terms that I've heard about collaboration, about trust, about honesty, about authenticity. The one thing that I would add for a successful partnership is that each party needs to recognize that the other party has an agenda or has objectives that we're all looking to meet, to recognize what those are, and then to work collaboratively to meet those objectives.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All the attendees for sharing your lunch hour with us. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. And also thank you to our sponsors, Goodwill of Central and Northern Arizona and Local First Arizona Rural Development Council. And I will leave it with Carrie to share any organizational updates and leave us there. Kat, I saw we had one question from you. We'll respond to that by email. And while we're talking about talent, I hear Carrie is hiring.
We are hiring right now a director of development and member engagement. But I would also like to mention that we have Economic Development Week coming up. It's May 9th through 15th. Our theme this year is Collaborative Arizona Communities. It's a chance for everybody across the state to celebrate economic development wins, collaborations, and just sort of talk about how economic development affects the quality of life in your communities. So that's going to be a really exciting event. And again, thank you to Goodwill and Local First Arizona. This is a great 3-part series, Mind the Gap, and we couldn't have done it without our sponsors. So thank you, and thank you to the panel.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining us.